to strap in and get ready.
The leaders in NRL Supercoach are incoming. Bringing you the ultimate insight to help you win your leagues and climb up the rankings.
You're now listening to the Insight NRL Show with your hosts, Brain, Mattrix, and Whisperer.
Yes, you are. It's been a minute or two since the last episode. It is episode 5 of the preseason, and we're coming to you with the final 5 team previews. Looking forward to that one on the SC Brain, as always, joined by Mattrix and Whisperer. Mattrix, you've been touted the sweatiest man in podcasting history. How do you respond?
That's how I respond.
Good. How are you, mate? You well?
Oh, mate, it's about 47 degrees right now up here in Queensland. It is hot, but I'm here, and I think that GoFundMe for a $12.50 fan is going off at the moment.
Josh, you've offered to buy him one.
Not even a full fan, just one of those like USB ones that plug in. Like I don't think he deserves a full one, but yeah, no, the man is struggling. And the comments have noticed a lot of perspiration coming out of the middle portion of our screens.
Yeah, good shine on the camera from the forehead and the cheeks. How are you, Josh? You well, mate?
I'm well, mate. I'm well. It's been a minute, but we're into the. I can't say the home straight, but we've definitely hit peak Supercoach preseason. The game's actually opened now, which is great. I'm sure all of our DMs have dried up now with the when does the game open stuff. So it's it's good to see it's open. You know, we've got ownership percentages now. We've got all the data that we need. So we're going to crack into the position podcasts after. But as you said, five teams and one team of note in today's episode.
Yes, one team of note, absolutely. Guys, the show is brought to you by Ryan from Astute Newstead, Standard Squeeze, and Bonus Bank. Remember to like and subscribe if you like the content as well. We would appreciate it. You want to get your NRL Supercoach team ready for round 1, we can help you with that. We've got plenty more content coming, like Josh just mentioned, so stay tuned on that. And also, if you're listening to us on audio, hit follow and review. We can actually officially launch our Unlimited League as well. The code is 777141. If you want to go and win a Supercoach ring, I'm sure we'll throw some other stuff in there. The weekly top scorer gets a Standard Squeeze prize pack as well, thanks to the Standard Squeeze. So jump on in, 777141. The link will be in the description below of this video as well. Guys, today, 5 teams: Panthers, Rabbitohs, Roosters, Dragons, and the mighty Tigers, ready for a resurgence in 2024. I reckon we're going to come 12th. But we'll talk about that soon. But, during the episode, we'll cover the buys of the schedule as well. We'll look at the ins and outs for each team. We'll talk through our cheapies, risers, and fallers for 2024 as well. But before we do that, we should talk about the latest news.
It's time for some news from around the league.
Josh, kick us off, mate, because the first one's an absolute banger and it's all yours.
Absolutely. The news that we've been waiting for. Kai Pearce-Paul is said to potentially be playing some trial footy. So we had the doubts about his toe, keeping him out for the first month or so. But, he isn't human. We know just of what a cyborg he is. But, looking to play the trials and deemed a certain starter at some point. Now, let's hope for our sake that certain point is round 1. But we're definitely going to be seeing a glimpse of Kai Pearce-Paul at some point this season, starting in the squad. But there's also been a little bit of rumblings, Mattrix, about sort of is Pearce-Paul going to play on the left, or is there going to be some other alternatives? We discussed that when we did the Knights, but there's potentially some more options being thrown up.
Yeah, well, Tyson Frizzell could move to play the left edge this season. I'm not going to say it's Frizzell season, but it could be Frizzell season.
I said it was Frizzell season in the chat, and I'm like, is that a thing? Can that be a thing? It can't be, can it, Josh? We've seen how good Frizzell's been in the past, but there's surely so many better options at a better price point in the 2RF.
Oh, there's better options, but draft. I think it has ramifications if he does play on the left. We've been talking about Dylan Lucas, Brodie Jones, or Kai Pearce-Paul about how valuable they're going to be on the left, and Dylan Lucas is only $50K cheaper than Tyson Frizzell, albeit Lucas does have the center wing duel. But it could be. I've definitely seen some worse people in people's teams. So it could be. If he comes out in the trial in week 2, and is just making burst for fun, KP's hitting well, then look, I've started with worse people in my team before.
Yeah, and look, we've talked in the past, and we've done the Newcastle pod, so we don't want to rummage on too much about it. But KP's tendency to love just going left all game plays into that left edge back rower's hands, doesn't it? So that I think that's probably why the extra appeal is there.
Oh, I like how you use the term hands. I was going to say, what a segue.
I was going to say, speaking of, extra appeal, I guess we could say. Brad Arthur has said he wants to play his hooker 80 minutes this year. So basically, he's come out and said, we're going to have a look through the preseason and look at who's looking good, and whoever wins that spot's going to get majority minutes. Mattrix, what are your thoughts on this? Is it basically locked in one of your hookers now in either Joey Lussick or Brendan Hands?
Yeah, 300 odd K. It'd be pretty hard to overlook them, especially with the question marks over like a Brayley or somebody like that. Hey, imagine going all the way down. Maybe you start with a Parramatta hooker and a Brayley and just spend all your money elsewhere. That'd give me the money that I need for, Haas and Nico and Dillbags and Turbo and all those great ones.
And it's kind of created now the question mark of, do I need Harry Grant? Right, Josh? Like, can you run with two really cheap hookers? I'm sure we've done that more than once in our life. Can we do it in NRL Supercoach this year?
Well, someone on this podcast has two cheap hookers at the moment. And, it's hard to buy into the stock. But, when you do look at when, Hodgson went down and Arthur, decided to move to Hands. Hands went 80, 80, 72, 72, 80, 80. And then Lussick came in. And he averaged, I think, 68 minutes for the season as well. So, look, it's hard to believe what Brad Arthur says, but the stats do back it up. And the thing is, I guess, if you think Hands or Lussick is going to get, say, 48, 50 points a game, and you project Grant at, 75, I mean, would you rather 25 points or, 500K, 400K? I mean, I think I could make up the difference with the money in hand. So that's a dilemma to have. Luckily, we're going to have a hooker podcast coming very soon that we'll touch on. About the pros and cons. But we talk about people and their stocks rising. David Nofalumas have fallen. Now, he's been handed a termination from the Tigers after his second breach. You thought that, he'd get a slap on the wrist and come back. But it's funny to note that Nofaluma has been dropped to reserve grade pretty much by every coach that we've had since, we were good, since like Mick Potter. I know Ivan dropped him, Madge dropped him, Sheen's dropped him again. Benji's just said, we don't want you. So I don't know. Like, if you're the Melbourne Storm, he had obviously a good run there, but does Bellamy just say, no, like, I'm good? We've got Coates, we've got Warbrick, you can just get your first plane to England?
My personal opinion is that the Dragons are pulling out of the race for David Nofoaluma, which has just been said yesterday that they've said, no, we're going to back our young guys. I'd say every other team in the comp would probably do the same thing. Would you?
And that says a lot,
Matty?
considering the Dragons have the Dragons have whiffed on every signing this preseason. So when they have one that falls in their lap and they go, you know what? We're actually pretty good, thanks.
Yeah, fuck, what a shambles.
Look, we're going to chat about the Dragons a bit more later, but at least not getting off Aluma. They're going to get a good draft pick again this year.
Ryan Sutton, speaking of good draft picks at the Bulldogs, they've got plenty of them. Ryan Sutton, though, unfortunately, he's going to undergo surgery. He's going to be out for 8 to 10 weeks, which means that there's a couple of guys specifically that could get a little bit of a bump in Liam Knight and Samuel Hughes, who has been touted to be training the house down, as Gus always does. He jumped on the Preston train and said that Preston was the standout last year. Look at how that worked out. Samuel Hughes is his guy this year. So Liam Knight and Hughes, they're both in my team at the moment. Matty, are they in yours?
Yes, they have made their way in. Just like from one of those. Oh, well, Hughes is just from one of those 400 odd K guys. Just what I could do with the extra 100K, made it worth it.
Yep. TPJ to the Broncos. I won't ask you, Matty. Josh, like, are there any implications here? I mean, he just becomes that bench guy again. Fuck. Like, what? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, it's odd because I don't think he's going to be signing until the mid-season. But with this cloud hanging over, with the fact that Fletcher Baker has had that groin injury in the preseason, like, it just reaffirms that I probably can't go near him at all. But this is a huge win for the Bulldogs. Surely they just get off the contract and they just see him go elsewhere. Like, I think it does raise some pretty weird, murky waters. I'm of the belief is that if you have 3 years left on the deal and you pull the retirement card and you come back, you've got to wait 3 years. It's funny because in his press conference, he said he doesn't want to be bossed around by halfbacks, by coaches. He does what he wants to do on his own time. And 6 months later, maybe sparring didn't go too well for him and he's back training. So, I mean, yeah, look, TPJ in his prime is amazing. If we can get TPJ back to somewhat of his best, and cool, that'd be a nice little mid-season pickup, especially over Origin when Carrigan, Haas and the likes are off to Origin. But yeah, and one thing we didn't know in the run sheet as well, whilst we talk about Broncos news, Adam Reynolds had that severe ankle roll sprain. So definitely one to monitor as well there. That could be have some ramifications.
I think on the Reynolds, I saw that something from NRL Physio said it was a foot injury or something instead of an ankle, which means it wasn't as bad. So supposedly from NRL Physio, so we'll back him in, which is good. Last one, Matty, before we jump into the Panthers, is Nick Meaney now has been said to be locked into left centre, so they're kind of embracing that. Does this now open the door for someone else? Considering we've got Justin Olam, obviously he's gone to the Tigers now, so they've lost that left centre, and Meaney's gone there. But does that mean that maybe Suafalogo could be maybe an option? Or
yeah, look, I'd like to see him get the spot, but it's just something that I'm just going to wait and see probably till the first TLT. Honestly, I don't know what Bellamy's doing. He's stubborn. He's really stubborn. So yeah, it's just as likely that we see Falongo play through the Origin period again until somebody's off contract and they just let him go. I'm just not getting too excited about it because of the nature of Craig Bellamy.
Yep. Yeah, fair call. Can't argue with that. Guys, we'll jump into the Panthers, but before we do, don't forget to join the Discord. If you haven't yet, the link is in the description below. We're talking heaps of Supercoach and fantasy sport as well across multiple sports, and we're starting to fill some NRL Supercoach leagues as well, some cash leagues. So jump in there and you can enter those leagues through the Discord as well. So, guys, let's talk Panthers. Oh yeah,
the consensus team.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
The consensus team. We just started that one. It's a one-way race for the hooker position at the moment, but how much money would you have put on the Brendan Hands? It'd be probably the second most popular option in the consensus team.
If you asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have been like, fuck, no chance. But yeah, obviously with everything that's going on at the moment, it's a decent bench pick now. Funnily enough, out of I think the 30 or 40 votes we've had on that consensus team so far, Jaden Brayley has one of them. Well, I thought there'd be way more votes for him. So yeah, very interesting. Yeah. But
I think the talk of Barry Toohey. I think the talk of Barry Toohey this week, I guess we didn't mention this in the news yet either, but Barry Toohey, obviously very in the know with the Knights stuff, expects a pretty hefty timeshare between Crosland and Brayley as well. So I know we touched on the Knights last podcast, but yeah, definitely worth noting that there's now some official talk from Knights higher ups that there's going to be a significant timeshare. Worth noting as well, I did a little poll on Twitter about if Brayley played 55 minutes, would you buy him or fade him? And it was pretty much split half and half between yes and no. So it seems like, boys, 55 minutes is sort of that cutoff where people are comfortable because he doesn't have the greatest PPM historically. But yeah, I guess overall consensus team's booming. So get in the Discord.
That's it.
Apparently, I'm the only guy that voted Sam Verrills, which I'm a bit disappointed that he just didn't get more love. Look, sometimes I I don't like to get too spicy with my own team, but then I'm like, the community team, come on, what if Sam Verrills has a ripper season? And yeah, I'm the only.
Is that person, what the one vote for Lachlan Croker was?
Yes, that was me as well. Well, you're allowed two.
Yeah, you are allowed two.
As many as you want.
You usually pick two good ones though, not just two kind of mid-range plotters.
Ugh.
Anyway,
jeez.
We'll leave that for the Hooker podcast. I know Josh is doing some work on that at the moment in the background for notes, so that'll be coming out very soon. But let's talk relevance in terms of Panthers because, I mean, it's the Penrith Panthers back-to-back. They're going for the trifecta this year. To be fair, though, they don't really have an easy run of it at the start of the season, Josh, do they? They've got a couple of pretty tough matchups into their bye.
Yeah, Melbourne away, Parramatta at home, which will be no easy, matchup in the West there. You got Cronulla. Oh, sorry, you got the Broncos, you've got the Roosters, and you've got Manly, then a bye. It does open up after that with the Tigers, Cowboys, and Souths, and then the Bulldogs again. But yeah, a little tricky 5-week period. Worth noting as well, I think it's 8 days between when they play in the UK and then when they come over to Australia to play that first game with Melbourne at home, which then bodes the question, do we start with Cleary? Do you just save the trade and do it early on? Do you, look for some other alternatives? I guess we can chat about that. But they've had a couple of new arrivals. They've had, back-to-back premiership winning sides, and they're continually turning it over. First one, Paul Alamotti, obviously, hugely hyped last year for the Bulldogs. Didn't materialise. That Bulldogs side wasn't fantastic, but he's coming in at 414k. Most likely going to be bench depth. But do you think that he can, fulfil that potential under Ivan Cleary, Matt?
I hope so. It's just about whether he gets the opportunity. He's one of those guys that have a look at him. He's an absolute unit. If he does get, that center spot at certain times throughout the year, I think that he's somebody that you can run for that amount of money. I'll be really excited to watch him play if he does get a run. But there's just that question mark over if he gets a run.
Yeah, and with you got Taylor May coming back into the fold this year as well. So, they're not going to really drop Taruva. I think they've said that they're going to move Taylor May to centre. Taruva's going to stay out on the wing. So it's hard to see where he does come in unless he plays in the back row, which I know was a conversation that could have potentially happened as well. Like you mentioned, Matty, he's a big boy. So these guys are just so stacked, though. It's going to be really hard for him to make his way in unless there's an injury. Dane Laurie, as a ex-Tiger, comes back home to Penrith. 515k, bit steep for me, so probably not a look. But it honestly, with the way that when players leave Tigers, they seem to play their best football. So Dane Laurie being home, back in his comfortable environment, back where he wanted to be, he could have a big season if we see an injury. Hopefully we don't, but maybe if Luai goes down again or something, he might get a crack at 5'8". Through the middle of the season when Cleary's out, they could move Luai to halfback and Laurie comes into 5'8". So you just don't know how that's going to play out, but quality player in his own right, Josh.
I think we'll be having a chat in 365 days about Laurie being an option for Supercoach next year. But this year going to be a bench sign, or not like a depth signing, but definitely can see him filling up that 6 role next year when Luai does depart. Next person on the list is Rolly Price, coming over from the Cowboys. Another one of these guys that's probably just going to be a bit of a depth signing. He showed some flashes at the Cowboys last year. I think it's a really nice pickup. They churn out, these unknown middle forwards that turn into gold. I mean, someone like goodness, I'm trying to think of the Lindsay Smith. He comes to mind. A guy that just no one knew about and then played 40 minutes a game last year and was absolutely unreal. So Price could be that guy in a couple of years' time, as could Brad Schneider be as well. Now, he's a great pickup from the Raiders. I think I was really impressed with what I saw from Schneider as a footy player when he was asked to do a job for the Raiders. I know that he was the Supercoach, bit of a phenom for about 6 weeks there at one point when Fogarty went down. But yeah, I think another great pickup. Their New South Wales Cup side's obviously stacked with talent as well. I think it's just these smart pickups in these guys that are maybe fringe players for other clubs that, Braino, as you said before, they just turn into quality first grade players in this Penrith system. So they're the new arrivals.
Well, these guys do always play Origin, like when we're talking about the Panthers. Like there's nothing really to say that Luai, like Cleary's going to get picked, but there's nothing to say that Luai doesn't get picked again this year. And then, we might see a bit of a Schneider and Laurie, like obviously, and we'll cover it in the outs. Like with Cogger going, they needed a Schneider to step in. So,
yeah, and Cogger did a great job last year, didn't he, filling in? So they'll miss him. Speaking of, he's gone
got
to the
himself
Knights.
a better contract. Yeah,
absolutely. Good luck to him. Stephen Crichton, obviously, big talking point. He's over at the Doggies, and there was we missed it in the news, but he's carrying a bit of an injury, lower limb injury as well at the moment. But there's no risk of missing round 1, but could just disturb the preparation of Crichton at the Bulldogs, and we don't know where he's going to play yet. So, that hurts them a little bit. Zach Hosking coming over from the Milk. I reckon this is a great signing. Great signing for Raiders, not so much for the Panthers, but we talked about them. I think we talked about them maybe like a day before that news came out. So I think that's a good pickup for them. And then they've obviously lost Tom Jenkins to the Knights. Spencer Leniu goes to the Sydney Roosters. I'm sure we'll be talking about him very soon as well. And the Jamin Salmon over to the Bulldogs. No injuries and suspensions, which is great. So we can move through that. But cheapie prospects, there are, I guess, a few, but none I'd really start with. I didn't want to really talk too much about the PTSD of Sonny Luke, but I think we probably need to talk about him because there's a few people starting with Sonny Luke, Josh, and they should not, and you should explain why.
I don't even think he's the second best option at the Panthers anymore. I think Somerville has come in and sort of taken that as best as possible. I know that we now do have ownerships, which I've got on my second screen here. There's 1.9% of teams that have Sonny Luke in them, and that's 1.9% of teams too many. Him and Franklin Pele will go down in infamy as the only two cash cows to lose money. So props to them. That was fantastic. Unfortunately,
Kudos.
yeah, I think some wires got crossed. Yeah, I think some wires got crossed with preseason reporting that there was, going to be 60-minute role there with Mitch Kenny playing a little bit through the middle, but never really materialised. And yeah, Ivan Cleary ended up just opting to go for Somerville. So I think that's going to be more of the same this year, unfortunately, for Sonny Luke. And I know for anyone out there that plays Dynasty draft that maybe, overreached and took Sonny Luke with the premise that he's going to potentially fulfill, I don't think it's going to happen. So he's not a guy I'm looking at. But as you said, Braino, I'm not really looking at any of these guys. I mean, Jesse McLean, he had a bit of a flash in the pan last year when I think it was Toto went down, and there was this like debate between McLean and Taruva, and obviously Taruva got the job and has now made that his own, but it's probably not worth talking about. But the cult hero, Maverick Geyer, we saw him kill it in trials last year, Braino. Do you think this is just another sort of year of progression for Maverick that maybe finds his fold into the 17 at some point during the season?
Yeah, they're just so stacked. Like I said at the start, I think it's going to be really hard to break into this 17. But Maverick Geyer, all the talk has been this guy's a jet. And you're right, he did show us last year in the trials that everybody got really excited last trials and go, fuck, this guy's going to play some NRL footy this year. And he did, but no Supercoach relevance last year. But basement price 204K. Not a guy you start with, but a guy you pick up if it looks like maybe there's an injury that could provide some minutes for him. So the talent is there for sure.
13% of teams currently own Maverick Geyer, which I think is high.
Interesting.
I think there's better options. But I do want to talk about, one of the better options is Liam Henry. Now, we mentioned before, Lindsay Smith came in, developed really well, ended up picking up a 40-minute bench role last year. I know that Ivan doesn't play Fisher Harris or Liotta for big minutes. Liotta only played 40 minutes a game last year. Fisher Harris played 48. Their edges play about 65-ish. Liam Martin's not an 80-minute guy, and Scott Sorensen, does fluctuate with his minutes a little bit. So Smith was great. Lenu's left. So now you would expect Henry slots into that Lenu role as first man off the bench. And that leaves room for Liam Henry. Currently owned by 6.8% of teams. I am one of them. I think you could pick up a 25, 30-minute role off the bench. 250K, good PPM. Probably could punch you out, 10, 15 points of value in a position that doesn't have a huge amount. So I think he's someone to monitor during the preseason as well, boys. I know he wasn't on the run sheet originally, but I just wanted to chuck his hat into the ring because he's a guy that I've got my eye on too, just filling out that front row forward slot in my team.
And Matty, the front row forward bench depth, really, there's no clear-cut option, is there? Like, I've got Xavier Willison and Samuel Hughes at the moment, but you can easily throw probably 5 to 10, or a blanket over 5 to 10 of these kind of 250 guys at front row forward.
Yeah, the guys I've got is actually Sam Hughes and Liam Henry. So, fantastic.
Man of taste, I can see.
That was, what was that?
I said a man of taste, I can see.
Yeah, exactly. But I had to, I was downgrading, having a bit of a play. I had massive FOMO when it came to Payne Haas, and I needed to find I just had to find 100K, and yeah, Fletcher Baker to a Henry seemed like, especially with some of this chat. I know TPJ might not be coming back until June or whatever, but maybe Fletcher Baker's not the hit out of the park that we thought he was going to be.
The injury puts some question marks up for sure for Fletcher Baker. Let's move on to the big fallers. I mean, there's only really one that stands out. Penrith are just such a well-oiled unit that most of the prices are pretty consistent from what we're going to see. But Tyrone Peachey at 581K, there's no way in the world that he has the role this year unless injury strikes Penrith again. He's just there's no relevance there. So definitely don't start with him. 0.3% owned is 0.3% too many people that have Tyrone Peachey. Let's talk value though, unless we've any other big fallers, Josh, that I've missed?
Nah, I think they're just one of those teams that have the same 13, 14 players every year. We just know what they are. There's no one that's going to stand out. No one that's going to flop too hard. But there is one person that will stand out. Obviously returning back from a season-long injury. And 36% of teams agree. A hefty ownership for Talon May, boys. Now, it's not... We can look at the previous stats and say, oh, well, he averaged 64.2, when he had his first full season in the NRL. There is probably a little bit of an asterisk there next to it. That was playing on the left wing, now moving over to the right centre. But we did see Stephen Crichton have success at times. He's someone that can go huge, and Talon May is a great footy player. Will obviously improve as he gets on. Priced at what, a 45? I think he could punch out, 50. So I don't expect him to get to the heights of 64 at centre, but I think 57, 58, and that's over 10 points of value for me, boys.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's a no-brainer. I think he's a really good option. Sub 500k, you can't complain about that. What are your thoughts? I mean, I actually think there's a chance he might start at left centre and they move Isaac Tungo over to the right. That seemed to work really well at the back end of last year. What are your thoughts on that, Josh?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because Tungo had such success on the left when he was required to be there, but also played well on the right. Obviously, it's locked into place that Taruv will be the left wing and To'o will be the right wing. That's not moving. But then it's a case of does Tungo and May swap around because Tungo had such success over the last 24 months at left centre, and May's just coming back into the fold. And maybe Ivan doesn't want to mix that up. But in saying that, obviously May played fantastically on the left when he was asked to 2 years ago as well. So I'm not too fussed either way. I know that it's a similar price to Crichton, and he had hot and cold spells, but May's base is just so far superior to Crichton's. I'm going to be picking him regardless. But if he does play on the right, and you were looking at To'o, just save the 300k and go to May.
Yeah, completely agree. Let's play some over-unders. I mean, in terms of value, it's tough because everyone's priced at their kind of near their peak, aside from Taylor May, who's come back out from injury and he's got an injury reduction in price. Is there any other value out there before we move to the over-under to finish up the Panthers that I've missed, or anyone you're looking at? I mean, I must admit I was looking at Scott Sorensen a little bit, but he's 670k. The role when he gets 80 minutes is phenomenal, but it's just hard to pick a 2RF with so much value around that price point when Cam Murray's 50k cheaper, Matty. So is there any love there?
What I find when I look at the Panthers is I don't expect too much to change. Like, even some of the ins and outs, you could just see these guys filling the roles of the previous successor, and you could go, hey, I think they're just going to average that. So they've got that consistency. So I find them a really good team to target in draft. But in Classic, I'm going to look for somebody that I think is going to get me 10 points of improvement. I think I'll finish the season with a lot of Panthers, but outside of maybe Talon May and a cheapie, I don't consider the Panthers a team to really look too hard at it Classic. But when it comes to draft, and that's what I really like about overs and unders, because that's what I sort of target. Like, Luai could be the best draft player over and out. Everybody hates him. Nobody drafts him. Nobody ever gets him in Classic because he gets the same every year.
Yep, fair enough. Let's, speaking of over-under then, let's move on. Nathan Cleary's a guy that people are talking about. Do I start with Nathan Cleary? Do I fade him because he's so expensive? Can I have Nico and Cleary to start the season? The question marks that Josh brought up at the start of the season were very centred around the club challenge, the Super Club challenge, or the UK game that they've got over there 8 days before the season starts. So there is a lot of relevance there in terms of travel. Does he go over under 89, boys, for the season? Because that's what he's priced on at this point.
I think overs for the season. For the first 5 rounds, though, massively unders for me. So I'm going to go overs for the season. Remember, he had the game where he was sent off, which was a -20. He had the game where he scored like 2 points with the hamstring when he was done after 5 minutes. So we're getting a bit of a discount for the season. But I think for the first 5 weeks, unders, season-wise, overs.
Ooh. So
yeah, I think overs. I think he can do it.
So does that mean, okay, so you're both saying overs for the season, but do you agree with Josh, Matty, that he goes unders to start the season into their bye?
Yeah, it's so rough, and that he's going to be there for Origin. When you go with Nico, there's still so many question marks. He might never get picked for Origin ever again. Cleary's younger than Nico. Honestly, Nico might never get picked for Origin. And
do we all agree that Nico's a must-have just off the bat?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So then the question becomes, do you pair him with Cleary when you know he's going to underperform for the first 5 weeks? The only dilemma that I'm facing, boys, is all 3 of us think Dylan Brown is an absolute must-have. He's locked in. Then do you want to run Brown and Moses? Because that feels kind of eh. And then otherwise, what other halfback is there? That's the thing. And halfback for me is not a position I want to be around with, and not having a playable option. I want to have a reserve tag on a 5/8. And apart from Moses, there's no other standout guns I really want to be targeting. And then you have to drop down to someone like a Caesar, who we'll talk about today. So it's a case of, do you just swallow your pride and know that you're going to lose money on Cleary, and people that don't buy him to start with will eventually catch up? Or do you just bank hell, like we're talking about Cleary like he's a bum, but he's still going to probably average 83, 84 for the first 5 weeks. And that's unders for what he's priced at, but it's still phenomenal.
My hardest thing is like when you've got Caesar or somebody like that, of that ilk, it's so fucking, like, it's such a distance to get a Caesar to a Cleary. Like, you're going to, what are you downgrading 100K for 6 weeks to get Cleary? Like, heck, it might be worth it, but that's my problem.
I know that we don't love Jaden Campbell, but to be fair to him, he's 480K. He has 3 or 4 good weeks, and then he's straight away to a Munster who's maybe fallen. Whereas Caesar, he's going to have to go gangbusters for maybe 5 or 6 weeks to get to that 500K price jump. So there's the big dilemma. So I can understand not dropping down too much. And if you are going to drop down to, say, a Caesar, you've got to have the capital. And no one likes to sit there with 400K in their remaining funds for the first 5 weeks. It's just not in our human nature. No. But to go back to your point, I think with the discount that we got with the sending off, the discount that we got with the hamstring injury, I'm going to take the overs for the season.
Yeah. Cool. And look, if you fade him and it works for you, fucking good on you. That's an incredibly good play. But I tell you what, you're going to be looking at Panthers games through the cracks in your fingers for 6. I don't necessarily want to do that. I just want to lock him in and keep him for the season, to be honest. So I'm happy to pay up. Guys, Isaac Tungo, a little bit of conversation around him. I actually don't mind him as an option this year, but he's a little bit priced out for me. But 68 overall under. What are we thinking for him? Down for Josh.
Unders. I just think that's
down for both.
Too much.
Okay.
Yep. What do you think, Braino?
It's a big total.
Let me know.
What about Jerome? Sorry.
What do you think?
I still think unders. But I don't think it's going to be by as much as people think. The guy's work rate, his work rate's elite. He tackle busts like a beast. Like, he's a good line runner. It's just depends for me. If he's on the right-hand side, he's playing on Cleary's side. I mean, Stephen Crichton, we saw how much attention he got and how much ball he got. A nice early ball as well last year. So if he can play on the right side, he's playing inside one of the best wingers in the competition in Braino. So that's an advantage for him. But yeah, the work rate's there. I don't mind it. I think he probably goes at around a 63 to 5. I don't think he probably tops 70 though. Jerome Luai, 58, boys. What are we thinking for Jerome Luai? Does he have a bit of a bounce back season? Because, I mean, for the caliber of player we consider him to be, maybe 58 would seem like maybe unders.
Yeah.
The problem with Luai is the 58's not a consistent 58. It's 6 weeks of 85 and then 6 weeks of 20. And that's the thing. I remember 2 years ago, maybe 2021, I think for the first 7 weeks, he was averaging 75. And then I jumped on, and then from there, he did nothing. It was the Reid Marnie syndrome from last year. So I think 58 is pretty much thereabouts. I probably will just say slightly unders, just because he's coming back from surgery, and I think maybe 3 or 4 games might be affected, but it's not going to be a huge amount. But I think 58 will be sort of the sticking point. I'll say unders just to give an answer, but it might be a case of 57.7, so pretty much bang on. But for Sonny Luke, we had him at 26. Someone just edited 2.6. I think that could be too high.
Well, yeah, I just 26 sounded a bit crazy, but 2.6, he might get that.
26 might be his career high point score ever.
Oh, fuck him. We all remember game 1 that he played last year when he got 50 in 18 minutes or whatever it was. So that was the ultimate NRL Supercoach catfish, I think. 26. I'm going to say overs, but he's not going to get more than 30.
I'll take unders on 26.
There we go.
Yeah.
Regardless, it doesn't matter. Only affects the 0.3%. Or do you say 8% of people had Sonny Luke at the moment, Josh?
Yeah. Hang on. It was something ridiculous. It was.
That's cool.
Sonny Luke 1.9%, which I think is ridiculously high.
Yeah, that's still insane. Fucking hell. We normally do questions on the Panthers. We don't have any, but we do have one that's relevant to the Cleary situation and whether you fade him and a good replacement for Cleary, and that team will come up very soon. So we'll cover that. But guys, before we move on to the Dragons, the show is brought to you by the Standard Squeeze, helping you drink responsibly and conveniently by measuring the perfect pour every single time. And you can go to their website, thestandardsqueeze.com, use the code INSIGHT15 and get yourself 15% off everything in store. So thanks to the Standard Squeeze for supporting the show. Matty's gone for a beer break, as he does at nearly every single sponsor call. So we're back into the Dragons, and Matty, you did these notes. You did a bit of a deep dive on the Dragons, and it's fair to say you weren't really impressed. We've stitched you up a little bit this off-season so far. We've given you all the shitty teams to research.
Yeah, so I actually did the notes. So I just said the Dragons suck, and then I put a line through them. So yeah, we can just roll through if you want. Yeah,
we are definitely losing our fan base very quickly here in the preseason.
Well, we did last year. We did last year anyway.
That's true.
Look, they don't have a bad start to the year, actually, playing the Titans and the Dolphins. Sharks and Manly become a bit harder a little bit further on, but they do have buys, 11, 16, and 20. They've got some new arrivals. They have had a few changes. They are trying a few things, which I love that for St. George. Corey Allen, who's injured. Tom Eisenhuth from the Melbourne Storm. Kyle Flanagan, the saviour, he's going to come and save them from the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs. Jesse Marshke, he's from 2024. Harm Saleh, South Sydney Rabbitohs, and Cyrus Stanley Trail. And in the outs, they've lost Billy Burns, who I actually really liked Billy Burns last year. Jaden Hunt, Josh Kerr, Alex Lobb, Moses Mbai, Tautau Moga retired. Zane Musgrove went over to Warrington. Jaden Sullivan went to the Tigers, and Aaron Woods went to Manly.
The one here that stands out for me, Tautau Moga, by the way, had a fucking awesome end to his career, didn't he? So that was good to see him go out on a high. Alex Lobb, Josh, he's gone to the Tigers, and I've seen him in your centre wing at some point. I know your team changes daily, but is he still there?
As a placeholder for now, but yeah, he was New South Wales Cup Player of the Year last year. He's big. He's a big, rangy winger, can goal kick really well. Big loss for the Dragons. I think he would have done well if he stuck around. But Benji seems to love him, and we'll touch on him more so in the Tigers podcast. But someone that's had a really promising New South Wales Cup career last season. Really, really keen to see what he can do for the Tigers this year.
For sure. You mentioned the Corey Allen injury, Josh, not overly Supercoach relevant, so we can move through that. No suspensions, luckily, for the Dragons. They need all the players on the puck.
Queensland Premiership, Queensland Origin winner Corey Allen. Put some respect on the name.
Okay. I better see him in your team then in a couple of weeks' time when we do our next team reveal. Best cheapie prospects. I know that we had a conversation, Matty, off air, and we were kind of struggling, I guess, maybe just purely off the back of the fact that the Dragons had a bit of a questionable season last year. They were pretty poor, but Kyle Flanagan, 310K, you don't mind his chances this year of being an option. It's just that he's in that 5'8" kind of halfback position that you do need to go pretty heavy on guns in that position.
I think so, but I think if you were going cheap, he's going to exceed 310K maybe through the first 7 or 8 weeks. I can't see him making much more than 100K or something like that. I think at his peak, he's a 450K player. And that's what Kyle Flanagan is.
Yep. The saviour, though. Fingers crossed. Good luck to him. Any other cheapies, Josh, that we can see at the Dragons here? I mean, is it more of a case of we're fading these guys because we don't see the team performing? What are your thoughts here?
Yeah. I mean, I think it says a lot about the public's perception of the Dragons when, Viliami Fafita is owned by 28% of teams, but that's just purely because he's dual and bottom dollar. But the next most purchased player is Kyle Flanagan at 6.9%, and that's the most owned player in a team. So I think that says a lot just about their stocks, and hopefully the Dragons can improve. But if we look at their absolute guns, I'm only really looking at probably Zach Lomax, and that's if he plays fullback.
Yep.
He's a guy that you love to pick up sort of mid-year when everyone's at Origin and he just goes on runs. But apart from that, maybe Mattrix's favorite front row forward, Harm Saleh. Maybe apart from that, there's no one else really I'm looking at. Just scrolling down this list, there was talk that Ryan Couchman was potentially playing some edge this year, but it looks like he's not. I think we spent a fair bit of time on the Panthers. We can probably skip through The Dragons, I mean, it is worth noting with some of their value guys that Jack DeBellin's priced at 57. Take out the last game of the year where he played 41 minutes in the first 2 games when he came back off the bench. He averaged like 62. So there's potentially 5 points there for JDB, who's a nice, dual front row forward, but there's probably better options in that price bracket. We spoke about Harm Salah at 423k. If he starts there, he's competing with guys like Terrell May, Tom Flegler, and for that 400k price, that's probably about it. I guess Dan Russell, we saw some flashes of him last year that, playing in the back row, he's available at centre wing. But a lot of these Dragons guys, I think with Shane Flanagan there, it's you have to sort of throw the preconceived notion out the window and just see what happens in trials and Teamless Tuesday. But for the Dragons, unfortunately for their fans, I'm not buying stock into anyone.
Yeah, I agree on that. Anything to add on Harm Saleh, Mattrix? What is he someone you're looking at potentially, or just a little bit too expensive?
Not really. Now that I'm looking to load up on a Payne Haas, maybe if I was looking to go a couple of mid ranges, he might have got a run in my first iteration of my team as we did a reveal. He was there because I actually probably think that he does get that front row forward starting spot. But then again, like, what is he tops? A 500k player? Like, I want to hit it out of the park. I don't want plotters. So
yeah. And also, you've got the Molo brothers on the bench as well. We know they're going to get a run. Dan Russell, if he gets a starting edge role, great. But you've also got Jaden Sewer. We don't know fucking where Jack Bird's at. God knows what's happening with his body or whatever. So he could be anywhere. He could be at lock. They move JDB to prop. Fuck knows. There's so many moving parts here that I think you just don't want to touch any of them personally. You got some over-unders for us there, mate, and we can move into them, yeah? Sorry, Josh, go.
Sorry, but we Dragons, it's not like we just hate the players. Like, if there was someone there that had an ECA value or an ECA potential, we'd jump on them. But like Carl Flanagan, as we said, is the only person. And the problem with Carl Flanagan is he's 80k more than KO Weeks. And he's 100k cheaper than Jaden Campbell, who I'd rather just pay the money for. So I think he's just a case of his position being loaded with other talent.
Good call.
Can I say that the slander of Jaden Campbell in the last chat, you're like, I know we don't love Jaden Campbell. I've got Jaden Campbell in my team, so wash your mouth out.
Sorry,
Josh.
I thought all three. I thought all three just had the pitchforks out for him in the Titans preview.
Yeah, we did. It's very funny how things change so quickly.
Yeah. Overs and unders. Ben Hunt 59.
Who cares?
Oh, look. I was just about to say, does it even matter?
We all play draft. If you're in the 5th round and he's there,
are we saying Dragons halfback? Are we saying Dragons halfback Ben Hunt or Broncos hooker Ben Hunt when he eventually spits a dummy by round 12?
Queensland hooker Ben Hunt.
Australian
Broncos hooker by round 12. Yeah, Australian hooker as well. Yes. Unders just because I have. Oh, actually, no. I'll take the unders just because Carl Flanagan probably has a little bit more responsibility than someone like Tal Talmon. So I take the slight unders.
I'm gonna take the overs on Benny Hunt 59 purely because I feel like if the Dragons are not going to get relegated to New South Wales Cup, Ben Hunt needs to score 65 Supercoach points a game as a bare minimum. He's the and you've also got Kyle Flanagan, and yes, like we expect him to be good and contribute, but. He's still a young halfback or young 5'8", so Ben Hunt's going to need to carry the load in this team. He's going to need to do much more than he's done in previous seasons, I think. So I'll back him overs.
I think Kyle might do a bit more of and they've said it, a bit more of the organising, which allows Ben Hunt to be Ben Hunt a little bit more. He's he can be quite a devastating runner, can get out there and have a bit of a chop. But yeah, if he's first receiver trying to organise everybody, I think that's when he's at his worst. Jack DeBellin, 55.
Overs.
I'm loading the overs. I'm going to remortgage my house and bet the overs on this. As I said,
and that's what he's priced.
Take out the games he started. Yeah, we'll take out the games he was on the bench and the last game of the season where he unexpectedly played like 40 minutes. He was putting out like 62 points a game. I think we forget Jack DeVellin was actually viable. 63, 71, 91, 84, 64 was like a 5-week run where I feel like him and Corey Horsburgh were just the guys that everyone had in their front row forward. Like it was just Horsburgh and DeBellin. I'm going to take the overs just because he's it for them really. Like there's no other punch in that forward pack.
But when he finds himself on the bench at times, like what's to say that he just doesn't go through a period like that again? That's all. That was probably. He's
they're
got his
gonna
own
have to play
off-field issues.
Yeah, he does, but they're going to have to play him 65 plus at lock. Who's going to shift to lock? Jack Bird. Are you going to rely on Jack Bird again this season? No, you're not, because the bloke can barely stay on the park. So, yeah, Jack DeBellin minutes wise, I think he's locked in for at least 60 minutes, and the guy runs at probably 0.9 to 1 ppm. So yeah, I don't see that as a problem. 55's heaps unders. Next one's interesting.
Last one, Sloan, 53.
Is that what he's priced at? I haven't looked.
Yes.
Show you how little
his
I've looked at
break even's
Tyrell's.
53.
Oh, God.
Average score last year was 53.1.
And he went on a run,
He had
didn't
a
he,
high
last year?
score of 90 and a lower score of 14.
What's the Dragons' draw look like? Did we talk about that much at the start?
Yeah,
They got a nice little start. Gets kind of tough through the middle, though, right? Sharks, Manly, Knights. And then they've got the Tigers, which is a decent matchup. And then they've got the Warriors, Roosters, Sharks, Souths before their bye. So, yeah.
I'll take the overs with a big asterisk that he has to start at fullback. If he doesn't, then obviously I'll hammer the
no
unders.
doubt.
But it's a huge caveat with him and his role with the team. Hopefully Shane Flanagan puts a firecracker up his ass and he plays to the level that we know he can. But yeah, I'm finding it hard to be motivated for the Dragons, boys.
I reckon that's the Dragons. Fuck.
We don't want to throw too much slander, boys, but we've got one question on the Dragons from Dragons 2010 in the Discord. So no question there as to why he's asking us whether Zach Lomax is a potential pod to start the season. Josh, you mentioned that there might be a little bit of interest there if he starts at fullback, but otherwise, you'd be fading hard.
I can't diss Mattrix for having random Dragons players in his very first draft team, because I also had Zach Lomax in my center wing at 640k on the proviso that he plays fullback. Good goal kicker at his time, destructive ball runner. I probably can't get behind him at center. Like if the draw was like the Dolphins draw, then I probably could. But if he's lining up at fullback, then I'll shift some funds around and move a certain Lebanese Bulldogs winger that I have in my team at the moment to Lomax. But apart from that, probably just let it go through to the keeper and hopefully he drops in price and we can pick him up for his nice little run post-bye.
I am very heavily leaning towards that certain Lebanese Bulldogs winger as well. So, we'll talk about him when we get to the centre wing. What's that?
Has Haslam returned?
Maybe. No. Fuck, imagine if he started goal kicking. Woo! Straight in my team. Guys, we'll move on to the Rabbitohs, but before we do, the show is brought to you by Ryan from Astute Newstead. With interest rates booming across the country, I'm sure you've probably wondered whether your current rates are too high if you're a homeowner, or whether you can maybe afford the next home and you don't have to worry anymore. You can contact Ryan, who offers confidential lending assistance, absolutely no obligations attached, and you can contact him on Instagram. It's not Ryan Astute Newstead, and I didn't update the notes, but it is Hammond's Home Finance. And you can mention us for a free consult. Just let him know that the boys at Insight sent you. Boys, Rabbitohs. A little bit of relevance with the Rabbitohs. Bit of a tough draw to start, though, again, which is why we probably haven't seen too many of these guys in a lot of the starting teams. But they've got a 7, 13, and 17 bye. So that round 7, even up to round 9, the fixtures here look pretty fucking brutal, Josh, to start, don't they? It's pretty hard to lean into too many of these guys, especially the outside backs.
Boys, are we going to sit here in round 8 preview and say, shit, is it time to jump on Alex Johnston? Because that draw gets juicy from round 8. Absolutely juicy. Latrell Mitchell's calling my name, but beforehand, yes. Manly, Broncos, Roosters, Bulldogs at home. Latrell could score 300 there. Warriors at home, Sharks at home, bye. Melbourne away, Panthers at home. So it's a pretty rough trot for the first, 8 weeks of the season there. Sorry, 9 weeks of the season if you include the bye. They have really one good game that we'll target in round 4, but apart from that, not ideal. In saying that, they do have a bye in round 13, but cover round 16, round 19, which is handy for your non-origin guys. Some new arrivals, though. Sean Keppie from Manly, and the big headline signing of the offseason, Jack Whiten from the Raiders, who has backflipped and will say he's going to play origin this year, potentially.
Maybe. I don't know. I think this could change 3 or 4 times leading up to it. He did retire from that level of footy, rep footy. But yeah, who knows? We've seen people backflip on retirement a fair few times.
And TPJ's a boxer, so.
I thought you were having a dig at me there for a second.
No, that's where I was leading, but Matty, it went a different direction, which I'm fine to lean into too.
I was going to say that's a me. I was going to say me and Jack White and TPJ, three famously good on their word.
And
boys,
John Farnham.
Sean Keppie, I think he's a nice pickup. I think he's a 7 out of 10 footballer who most teams need in that middle. Their middle, did struggle at times last year, getting a little bit decimated. You've got basically Murray, Tavita Totola, and whatever Burgess is still left. I can't remember which one's still left, but they're sort of the only three. Dave Moali struggled at times. Shaq Mitchell, great story, probably not at that first grade continual level. He's playing big minutes every week. So I think Sean Keppie, yes, he's not exciting, but I think he offers something for most NRL teams.
No, I don't hate that at all. Shout out to Ryan Hammond, who we just gave a big shout out to very early for sponsoring the show. Ryan is an avid Supercoach player, and funnily enough, he owned Sean Keppie all year last year. He was very tempted to captain Sean Keppie, the Kep Goat, as he called him. So shout out to Ryan. I don't think he's going to do what he did last year at Manly, but that's tough. And thanks for the note, Matty. We're going to have to pass on all of your work issues right now. We'll talk about them afterwards. Who's gone, Matty, from the Rabbits? Because not really anybody of note for the Rabbitohs, but a couple of good signings for other clubs.
Yeah, look, their depth was probably too good. They had a lot of guys that couldn't get a run that were really good. Blake Taft stands out for me as somebody that I've always considered starter caliber, but hasn't quite got there. Always really handy through the origin period. And the fact that Latrell at times has struggled to be on the park. But yeah, he's off to the Bulldogs. Harm Saleh, as we spoke about, should get a run at the St. George Illawarra Dragons. Liam Knight, as we spoke about, should get a run at the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs. And even Jed Cartwright, as we spoke about, should get a bit of a run at the Newcastle Knights. All really good players. But yeah, probably not good enough to crack into this this South team that should be pretty good again. So,
yeah, you'd like to think they compete for sure. On the injury and suspension front, we've got Ty Munro as well. He's in a moon boot at the moment. He has an ankle injury. The word at the moment is he's going to miss trials, but he should be ready for round one. I would say maybe that he's tracking well. That's about all we know about Ty Munro at the moment. But in that
first one of this episode where 52 minutes in, that's the first tracking well of the episode.
That's it. I'm sure there's fucking more to come. Guys, the suspensions, we've got Jack Byton, 3-match suspension for biting last year. So that was, he challenged that, didn't he? That was originally a 2-match suspension, but he challenged it and failed it. So got that upgraded to 3 games. So he misses the start of the season, unfortunately, for the Rabbitohs. Now, cheapie prospects, we're obviously preface this by saying we're looking at players 350k and under at the moment. And look, the only one that really stands out for me is Tallis Duncan. Now, the question mark becomes, does he start off the bench or does he start on an edge? And Josh, you've got good word, potentially he could be starting on an edge this season.
Good. Don't throw me under the bus. I'm just picking up what other people are putting down. I'm if he starts, obviously people are comparing him to Cam Murray.
He's a lock.
Worried. I'm just worried that Demetrio just runs with Jai Arrow to start the season. Like it's just going to be Cam Comatungi, Jai Arrow, and then Cam Murray in the back. Is worth noting though that Demetrio has mentioned about Cam Murray playing more footy this year and getting a rest on the edge rather than on the bench. We saw how destructive Cam Murray can be moving to the edge for Australia, which would obviously open up a spot for Duncan to come in and play through the middle when he's required to. So I think he's someone to monitor. I think he might be just a preseason hype job at the moment. People seeing that he's owned by as many people. Like if you open the app, if you're a casual player, if you haven't listened to any podcasts or looked at any content through the preseason, you open up your team, you see a guy that's 300k that's owned by 30% of the game, you chuck him in. I know that there's a couple of pages and big personalities in the space that are pushing him to start. I'm hesitant to say that from round 1. I think he will start by round 27. I'm just worried that Demetrio just runs with KK, Jai Arrow, and Murray at 13, but definitely one for the Black Book.
I think you're spot on. I can't see a world at the moment where they start without Jai Arrow on an edge. He plays in the middle and on an edge. He's so versatile. So I think they probably start with him. But yeah, you're right. I'm on board with that. That's kind of the only cheapie for the Rabbitohs. Big fallers though. Big 5 points of regression here. It's hard to find them. For me, I'm kind of looking through this team, and I really don't see anybody taking a big hit. But when we look at the draw to start the season, it's pretty tough. And we know that Cody Walker is a guy that's absolute rocks and diamonds, if ever there has been one. He had a much more consistent season last year, funnily enough. But I think we're probably, with the draw to start, Cody Walker could drop some cash. And like you mentioned, Josh, their draw firms up beautifully around that round 10 Dragons, Cowboys, Para. So he could be a really nice pickup in round 10, boys. What do you think, Matty? Cody Walker, definitely a fade to start?
Yeah, definitely a fade to start with that draw. The guy I'm going to be looking at, and of course, the guy I'm thinking is going to drop a lot of cash, and Josh mentioned Alex Johnston. I think Keon Kolomatangi could drop a lot of cash, and then round 9, we're all adding Keon Kolomatangi at 520k. Which is something that I've sort of earmarked. It's something that I'm looking forward to. And I just think with that draw, I just can't see him scoring really well. And then I can't see him getting picked in Origin, which has burnt me before. But yeah, I think Keon could be the guy that I'm gonna target there a bit later on. So a big fall to start the year. I think everybody will have a bit of a fall with this draw. But yeah, Keon's going to be the one that I'm targeting, I think.
Any other fallers, Josh, on your end?
The entire team for the first 8 weeks, the entire back line, as we said, I think they're going to average very much the same, but it's going to be a case of Cody Walker averaging 42 for the first 8 weeks and averaging 86 for like the period that they go on a run. So Trell's going to be a tough one to pick with Origin. But yeah, Cody definitely, he's going to be thereabouts. AJ, we always have to own AJ because he goes in these spurts of a month of footy where he averages 106. So he's going to be there. I mean, Munro, if he is injured and he comes back a little bit slow, we saw how good he could be, in spurts last year. Campbell Graham, ever so consistent. These kind of guys that we hope that have a bit of regression to start the season, that we can pick up on a bit of a discount. But moving into the value, guys, there's a couple. We mentioned Ty Munro, 483k, currently 6.8% owned. Yeah, he's a guy that I'm looking at after round 8, and I'll preface that. A lot of these outside backs I'm not really keen on for the first, 2 months, as we've discussed. Their draw is pretty horrendous. Any love for Munro, boys? Or are you happy to move into the next guy who I'm actually pretty keen on?
Yeah, let's move straight into him.
Tavita Totola, 435k, 2.3% owned. I think that's too low for the situation that the front row forward class find themselves in. Injury plagued last season, as you mentioned in the notes here. Has roughly a 1 ppm kind of guy, and with how versatile these locks and edges are for the Rabbitohs, I think Dimitro is going to look towards Totola to play up to 50 minutes a game. We've seen that at times in his career. And yeah, he played 8 games last season, boys, over 50 minutes and averaged 51. So price is about a 43. There's about 8 points of value there, which is not the 10 points we'd like to see. But front row forward, I think you have to look at it totally different. I think front row forward, if you can get a guy to hold firm, make a little bit of cash, but most importantly, hold firm. Picking a Liam Knight is great in theory until he falls out of form and goes to the bench because he's 300k. Yeah. There's a lot more to lose there. And Totola, who's 430k, we've seen that he can pump out 50s. Yes, it's not huge value, but the most important thing for him is he is going to be rock solid. And then you can look at building around him to get to your Payne Haas. You can find your 200k elsewhere to get from Totola to Haas.
Yeah. I think Tavita Totola is the perfect front row forward too this year to start the season. You just mentioned you've got a lot of guys around that sub 300k or that awkward 300k price point. I mean, if you ask me, Haas and Totola in the front row, you can definitely, I don't know whether you're going to have a better combo, but if you're not looking at starting with Payne Haas, Matty, like you could easily go with Totola and a couple of other options that we've talked about so far through the preseason. As front row forward, there's minimal upside, isn't there, in that position?
Yeah, I'm suddenly sitting with Haas and Max King. Just sat there and spent up, but my bench is lacking. But yeah, in a perfect world, if I need to save some money, it would be somebody like Totola or the next gentleman we're going to talk about, which maybe has a bit more attacking upside due to the fact that plays second row forward, but is going to be getting that front row forward duel this year.
Yeah, Jai Arrow, 466k, very similar owned to Tavita Totola, actually 2.4% owned. And for me, like, I don't know whether I love the Jai Arrow pick. It just all comes down to the minutes that he's going to get. If we look through last year, he played, his minutes were all over the place. I'm going to try and search him right now. A little bit underprepared on him, but like when we look at his minutes, like sometimes he played 80 minutes, then he'd go and play 60, then he'd play 32. And I think it all came down to Totola. Correct me if I'm wrong here. He got injured 3 or 4 times mid-game, didn't he? And it threw the whole Rabbitohs forward rotation out the window, Josh. So maybe that affected Arrow's consistent minutes over the season?
Yeah. I was very anti-Arrow when he moved to South, 4 years ago. I think people were expecting that Titans output, and I just didn't see it. But he's found his role, I think, and he's a very serviceable guy that is reliable, that JD can rely on. Supercoach-wise, yes, those minutes do fluctuate because he is a guy that JD is happy to play for big minutes when he has to. But I think that's a case coming down to Shaq Mitchell, Dave Mawali just not being that first-grade standard that we talked about at the start of the show. But with Mawali getting another year older, another year bigger and stronger, and the acquisition of Sean Kepi, I don't see the minutes for Arrow in the middle that he once played. Obviously, injuries happen, and he will probably pick them up. But for me, Arrow, I think he is at value to undervalued for me personally, but I can see the appeal for that duel. He's another guy like Totola who is just rock solid, a guy that won't let you down, but probably won't boost you through the rankings. He's a very, very good placeholder for a couple of weeks.
I looked at his, sorry, Josh, I looked at his minutes. It went 20, 60, 70, 40, 60, 50, 70, 20, 60, 50, 20, 50, 30. So, like,
your hair out
all over the shop. How can you rely on that from a Supercoach perspective? You just can't.
No,
I was going to say, with the tough draw, the forwards might be the ones to go at here, because someone like a Cam Murray, for example, if it's a big forward battle, Dimitri will probably just keep his main guys in. And yes, it's going to hinder the backs, but it could be your gem for the forwards here if it's a close battle between two good sides. So that's just something to worth note as well. But yeah, sure. Braino, Arrow's minutes. If he played 60, sure, 100%. But like you just said, mate, it's from peaks and diamonds, and you'll go from 70 to 21 week with no explanation.
Anybody watching right now and wants to quickly hop on eBay and buy Mattrix a little desktop fan, please do so. The man's sweating bullets over here.
A little bit. Jesus.
That's all right. It's covered. Boys, unless there's any other value out there, we've kind of talked about why we're off a few of these guys. And there's a couple of guys here that are very relevant, and we've got questions about them as well. So the 3 big dogs at Souths in the over-under this time around. We've got Latrell Mitchell. Firstly, we know that Latrell's kind of faded in and out of games. He comes in and he does this kind of effort for 20 minutes of a game and he'll score you 110 points. But otherwise, then you kind of see him. He's not really that guy that loves the sweep plays. He's not following through. He's not a good support player at fullback. But he's just so fucking good. So we've got a question here. After the over-under, 77 is what he's priced at, boys. What do we reckon? Over for the season, or are we going unders? Josh, over?
Remember, he had that
I
weird.
Still think over.
He had that weird hamstring issue where he was blaming the South's physios. He was never fully fit. The 2 years beforehand, boys, 85, 82. So the Trell Mitchell fit is unbelievable, and I'm a huge Trell guy. I think 77 is just a reflection of the weird injury that he had last year. So I'm going to smash the overs on that one.
Like it. But obviously off the back of the fact we think that he's probably a fade and hopefully drops a little bit of cash early on with the tougher draw. But we know that Latrell fucking steps up against good teams and doesn't give a shit against bad teams. So there's a question mark there that maybe he could be perfect to start with.
Hey, in saying that with Trell, he had 75% of his games last year over 60 points. So he was a very, very consistent runner. Even against the good sides like Penrith, he scored a 62. Against the Chooks, he scored a 66. He loves playing the Chooks. Against Melbourne, he scored a 67. Against Penrith, he scored 102, and against the Broncos, 96. So he can definitely put those good sides to bed. But I remember that game, Braino, round 11 versus the Tigers. We had that game won. Latrell was on about 10 points after about 75 minutes, and he ended up on 91. Yep. I think he had 2 involvements very late in the game, and that's what Trell can do. He is a stressful watch, but there is no fullback more destructive than him when he wants to be. And I'm going to take the over 77.
And let's not forget, South are a good team. They're not a bad team. They've got a lot of experience across the park. They've got good forward pack. They've got good outside backs. They're not a bad team at all. So, and when you can get a guy like Latrell that also kicks goals, mind you, if the Souths put up points, he's going to score well. It's as simple as that. Yeah,
very good
absolutely.
As well. Not just a
outside of Supercoach, you know what South Sydney need? A halfback like Adam Reynolds. I reckon they'd really excel if they had a halfback like Adam Reynolds. I just think he could take them to the next level.
From Broncos supporter, the Supercoach Mattrix. Cam Murray, 62, boys. Are we smashing the overs on Cam Murray this year? You had a bit of a down year in comparison, right?
Yeah,
absolutely. I'm buying all the Cam Murray stock that I can.
The relevance there for you, and you mentioned it at the start of the show or through the show, was that Cam Murray could be switching to an edge this year as well as playing through the middle. And if we can get him more on the park, more minutes equal more points. As simple as that for Cam Murray. He's too good to be doing nothing. So I like it. The one that I'm not as overly keen on is Damien Cook. Now, he's 65. He's priced on at the moment. Bit of an awkward price. If you're going to pay up for someone, you're going to just pay up for Harry Grant being an extra, 90K, I think the price difference is. But he's at 65, so what do we think?
Poor man's Jeremy Marshall-King.
I think the re-signing of Pete Mamazoulias is going to be big. I think Pete Mamazoulias will play a lot of 14 this year. And Cookie's not getting any younger as well. I think Demetrio might use him in spurts this year. Not spurts, but 5 minutes either side of halftime, just get Mamazoulias on there and just try and tear havoc. Yep. And Cookie, he is declining, and I'm not keen on Cook. Not even in draft. I think he might be overdrafted a little bit in draft format as well.
For sure. And look, it's Harry Grant or the 10th round for a hooker in draft. We'll do a draft show a bit closer. But yeah, I think you're spot on. We've got one question for the Rabbits, and it's centered around Latrell Mitchell. And should the Bartlett fan club, he wants to know, even with the Rabbitohs tough draw, is Latrell a buy? Have we covered anything else there? Is there anything else to say on Latrell Mitchell? And is there a case that you just start with him and lock him in?
I can see the appeal because we just said, a 92 against the Broncos, 100 against Penrith, 87 against Melbourne. Like he can perform against the good sides, but I just want to see South gel. There's going to be no Whiten for 3 weeks.
Yep.
And then you want to see how that combination develops, because the last thing you want to do is buy Latrell to start with, get him for 3 weeks with no Whiten. Whiten comes back and it's just clunky as fuck on the left-hand side for 4 weeks until they find their feet. So me personally, I'm pretty keen just to watch how that left develops, which is not going to be until round 4. And then if you give yourself a month, that's round 8. And I think a month's a good time to look at them, boys. And then by round 8, you know exactly what you're getting with Trell, and you're getting that golden draw.
Can't argue with that.
The problem for me is that Latrell isn't Turbo or KP at the moment. Like, I would just rather go with Turbo or KP. I am more scared not to own Turbo or KP than I am Latrell. And I love Latrell. He's been phenomenal. I've had him at times. But with this draw, as you said, they might be sorting out a couple clunks at the moment. Look, imagine a downgrade from Turbo to Latrell and banking yourself 200 or 300K. That's the dream I want to live in round 10.
Yeah. So it's probably a watch this space, I guess, on Latrell to start the season with so many tough matchups. But yeah, look, if you want to pod, and a fucking good pod at that, then there's not many better picks out there.
Oh yeah, no, it's not like you send us your team with Latrell and we go, oh, what the fuck is that? Ill. No, absolutely not. I think he's a good pick. I just think with the factor of Whiten and you just give yourself more time to have a look at how South's gel and then buy in the good run. But just buy in the good run.
What's his ownership?
His ownership. That is a great question. His ownership
9.8%.
Smart man.
That's a pod. That is imagine getting Latrell Mitchell at sub 10% ownership.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Sorry, I'm just adjusting my team.
Yeah, we saw the live Turbo trade in, I think, after episode 1, wasn't it, Josh? And now we're going to see the live Latrell trade in.
Fuck that Mattrix guy. I don't believe a word he said.
He's currently the 10th most owned. He's currently the 10th most owned fullback. And that does have guys like that's got guys like KO Weeks and Jaden Campbell in there who are being picked out of positions Suafalondo as well. But still, Latrell to be outside the top 5 in pure fullbacks, good pod play.
Wild. Boys, Bonus Bank. Thanks for Bonus Bank for supporting the show. They're Australia's #1 matched betting site. You can go to bonusbank.com.au. Use the code INSIGHT to get 25% off your first month of their premium subscription. You can start making some tax-free and some risk-free money today with all of their tutorials. So hit up bonusbank.com.au. The Roosters are the second last team on the slate here. And when I say bad draws, I mean, that there aren't really many harder matchups for the Roosters to start the season. They've got the Broncos, the Panthers, the Knights, the Melbourne Storm, the Broncos again, and the Warriors in their first 10 rounds. That's probably one of the hardest schedules I think I've seen so far, Josh.
Sharks away, Canberra away after that as well, which are easy fixtures. They've got 2 good games in the first 12 weeks. This is as rough as it gets, especially if you look at some of these outside backs.
Buys in 14, 19, and 23. So only one major buy there that it'll affect or that will be a bonus. So it kind of hurts them a little bit, the round 14 and 23 buy with the Origin guys, especially guys like Tedesco. But Matty, do you want to take us through the new arrivals and the outs for the Roosters?
Yeah. Look, Spencer Lenu's coming to town. Everyone's excited about that. Lewis Murphy, Ethan Roberts, Blake Steep, Xavier Vaya, Alex Young, and Dom Young from the Newcastle Knights. The outs are Corey Allen, Fletcher Baker, Thomas Deacon, Eli Elzakem, Tuku Hau Tapua from the Cronulla Sharks, Drew Hutchison, this was a stitch up from Braino. Fuck that guy. Hey, Matt Lodge.
Try again, please. Try. No. We're not skipping past that. Try again.
Vuate Karawalevu was released. Matthew Lodge can say that one. Paul Momirovski can say that one. Jackson Paulo went over to Manly, and Jake Turpin, another utility for the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs. Mate, there is a lot. There is a lot of like quality outs here with not a lot of coming in. Braino, you missed probably the best moment of the podcast. When you go back and edit this, have a listen to Mattrix reading out Vuate. That was classic. But basically, like they've got Lenu and Dom Young in. They've lost Corey Allen, Fletcher Baker, Drew Hutchinson, Matt Lodge, Momirovski, Jackson Polo, Jake Turpin. Like they're not quality. I mean, amazing first grade players, but they are still names. And the Roosters have struggled with injuries over the last couple of years. So they've lost a lot of depth for two good quality signings.
In saying that though, boys, like the Roosters forward pack is deep. Very, very deep. I reckon I'm going to go out on a limb and say it could be the best forward pack in the competition in terms of depth.
Yeah, but we heard how good they were last year. They were dog shit. Like the Roosters were shit last year. I hated
also
watching
ravaged by injury.
You had Angus Crichton who was mentally not well. You had Sua Wong who was not first grade ready yet. You had Stili Tupanua who was out for half the season with an ACL. You had Egan Butcher who just probably wasn't ready for first grade at the time. You've got him and Wong with another year under their belt. Crichton's back. He's looking at his Instagram, he is ripping, ready to go. You've got Tupanua who's now established back, ready to go in the first grade. So their forward pack is really good. You've got Terrell May who was we'll talk on. Jared Hargraves does his job well. Lindsay Collins was one of the best footy players last year in a rep sense. You've got Connor Watson who's now a year back from his major injury. Yes, I can let Victor Radley through to the keeper. I don't understand the Radley hype. But apart from that, man, like there's some really good footy players, and then obviously they get Lenu through the door as well.
And also, we haven't mentioned, but Brandon Smith has had a full year at the Roosters under his belt now. Like he hasn't come over from a Storm in a different system. It took him a while, obviously, last year to kind of get into his role, and obviously playing full-time hooker was a bit of a challenge for him to start as well. But he's got a year under his belt. I think he'll be better for that this year, and he came good at the back end of last year as well, Josh, didn't he?
I think Cheese is the kind of guy who won't play his best footy if he's the main guy. I think he needs someone chomping on his heels, and he gets Watson back. And it's no surprise that he was playing good footy last year when the Roosters started to get people back through the door. I know we're not an NRL fantasy podcast, but Cheese is in my fantasy side.
Me too.
And I think the forward pack for the Roosters is really, really good. Yes, we say this every year, but I think there was a huge asterisk last year, and I'm actually really keen to dissect them this episode.
For sure.
Is
Let's
Chiefs
do that,
300k yet?
I wish.
Not quite. Otherwise, he'd be in probably about 60% of teams, I reckon. No injuries, luckily, for the Roosters, but suspensions, boys. Jared Warrior-Hargraves, he's out. Well, he's copped a 6-match suspension. But funnily enough, likely to be available for round 1 in Vegas due to there's a loophole. So they're looking into counting international matches for New Zealand in the Pacific Championship. So that wiped 3 games off his suspension. I don't know whether I want to dive into the politics of whether we agree with that or not, but I'm not sure whether there's too much relevance there either, because you could just get trapped into another front row forward that then JWH comes straight back in and makes them irrelevant.
If you get suspended from NRL games, they are to be served in NRL seasons. If you get suspended, you can go play for Queensland, you can go play for New Zealand, you can go play for the Cook Islands. I don't care. But if you're suspended playing for the NRL, you must serve those games for NRL games, not preseason trials, not preseason club challenges. It's frustrating.
I'm with you. I agree. Let's talk cheapies. Spencer Leniu, probably the only sub 350 guy that I'm looking at personally. 332Ks, 20% owned, but I mean, how do we really think he's going to play more minutes at the Roosters than he played at the Panthers? Like, how does this play out, Josh? My favourite journalist of all time, Dean Bulldog Ritchie, sat down with Trent Robertson a couple of weeks ago and was chatting about Spencer Leniu, chatting about the Roosters this year. And Bulldog asked Trent Robertson, how are you going to use Spencer Leniu this year? And basically, the long story short is they want to use him the same way the Panthers did, as a very explosive, quick impact, high energy guy. And to me, that just screams, he is what he is. And I'm not touching him at all. I can't. Completely agree. I think you mentioned throughout the show that it was the people that don't really pay too much attention through preseason, or people that haven't opened the app too much, and they just open it up, they filter it, they've got Supercoach Plus, they filter it by ownership, and they just whack a few of these blokes in. And I think 20% owned for Leniu, that'll change very close to TLT as well when people see that he's on the bench. Matty, I mean, is there anybody else cheapie-wise that is so deep at in the forwards? You know, they've got JWH, Collins, Butcher, both Butcher brothers. They've got Wong, Radley, Tupanua, May, and Crichton. Like, Terrell May is another guy, but he's just not in that cheapie range. We'll talk about him soon. Anybody else?
There's just so many mouths to feed, though. Like, the way that you're mentioning it. Like, there can only be so many dogs that can eat. Like, I would love to add a Crichton or a Tupanua or even a Siua Wong, but I just can't find any pathway that one of these guys is going to be an 80-minute super impact guy. I think if Crichton's right, and that's a big asterisk, and I don't want to get too deep into mental health or anything, but I wanted to add Crichton last year, way over Cam Murray's, anyone else like that. He was coming off that Australian series and he was phenomenal. If we can get a little bit of that, Crichton's probably the guy at 409K that you want to own.
Yep, he's in the value picks.
Angus Crichton is currently 6.9% owned. If he is named to start, that will be 41, 42, because it's the name recognition, the fact of the pedigree. Let's talk on the forward pack, boys, because obviously the big rotation is the edge. Now, I think we can rule Nat Butcher out in the starting conversation because I think he provides so much value through the middle for Trent Robinson.
Yep.
So then it's really, and I probably can also rule out Egan Butcher just based on performance. So really, it's three holes into 2 pegs. So it's Wong, it's Crichton, it's Tupanua. Crichton and Tupanua can both play through the middle. We saw that last year. What do you think, Braino?
I think Wong is locked in on right edge, and I think Crichton has left edge and Tupanua off the bench. I think that's the way that it plays out. Tupanua was decent off the bench last year when he came back, and obviously his minutes were managed, but can you really not? I mean, Siua Wong, how fucking good was he last year, man? That guy's such a serious talent. The guy finds the try line like no one else either. He's fucking awesome. And he played right edge last year as well, so he's got that really good cohesion with Luke Keary. Do you change that? Like,
no.
I reckon
and we saw Angus.
He's in my team at the moment.
Well.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, we saw Angus at his best on the left when Tupanua was on the right. And what you've already said there is Wong was so good on the right that he has that spot locked up. Do you then move Tupanua to the left? Do you just put Crichton there if he is ripping and tearing? Because he looks trim as fuck in the preseason. He said on Instagram he is so clear, he's ready to go. The question then becomes, if we rate Wong so highly and we think Crichton's a must-have if he starts, do you run both?
I mean, hey, why not? You could. I mean, I actually see the Roosters improving severely this year. I think they're actually going to be, I reckon they're going to be a top 4 side. And there's one more guy I want to talk about, and I won't ruin it just yet, but he is in the value picks, and he is a guy you could potentially look at. We've got a question about him in the halfback category that I think is worth talking about. But, mate, Crichton, pedigree. Su'a Wong, up and coming, one of the best edge back rowers in the competition, I reckon, for his age. So I don't have a problem with starting with both personally. Matty, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not sure I could start with both. At the price, there's an argument for it, but like, you just wonder if you're going to get value going both on the same team. Like, you just want to get the side that they go to the most on the Bulldogs and the side that they go to the most on the Roosters. And whether you've started with Su'a Wong and you're swapping to Angus Crichton in round 3 because you got it wrong, I don't think that you own both. That's my answer.
The counter to that is they are both at such a price where there is so many fucking options that if you run both, one of them flops. You're not scrambling to find a replacement. Like, I have both in my team right now. I don't have a Josh Curran. I don't have a Tallis Duncan. I don't have a Beau Fermor. There's 3 guys there that if Wong flops or Crichton flops, or if even both flop, there's 3, 4. Kick out is another one. Like, there's so many guys here that we can just move to. And you'd fucking hate yourself if you've got like Wong and no Crichton, and Wong comes out and puts up 70, Crichton comes out and puts up 70, and then you're like, well, shit, now I need both, when you could have just started with them in the first place. It's what's the age-old saying is it's costs you 1 trade to fix a mistake. It costs you 2 trades to bring in and fix a mistake. So if you bring in Crichton and he sucks, or like, for example, like you don't start with Crichton, he scores 70 round 1, you bring him in, he sucks, you have to trade him out. Whereas if you just start with him, there's so many other options to downgrade to. And I think that's the key point that I'm looking at. It is just there's the pool of players to choose from. If it doesn't go well, it's not like if you're picking Liam Knight and he sucks, then what the fuck do you do? Like, there's so many people at 2RF to pick from.
And also, Matty, there's clear relevance around price change, right? You've got 3 weeks to have a look as well. So at worst case, you can transfer across to one of the guys that's doing the best that you missed. And we're not going to get them all right, are we, to start the season?
And we did just talk about the worst draw in the world. Like, I would prefer a Beau Fermor and a Sean Bloor over an Angus Crichton and a Su'a Wong, I think.
Okay. I mean, we talked about the Melbourne Storm have probably the 2nd worst draw in the world. So does the same kind of thing apply for Sean Bloor?
Could do. I think he's underpriced where he's at. Like, these guys played for this team last year, and the Roosters were what they are.
I also don't think teams are going to be defensive juggernauts to start the season. Like, people aren't going to be fully fit. Like, let's remember that.
Yep. And also, I mean, when we look at the start of the season, we often see the guys in the middle doing a lot more work to start the season. So, and most of the time then as the season goes on, balls expand, like the playing style expands to, and the centers and the wings and the edges get involved a little bit more. So there is some relevance there. But boys, Terrell May I want to talk about because he's 430k. He's 14% owned at the moment, and the bloke could score 1.5 ppm, and I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest. He's been in and out of my side to start the season, Josh. Is he a guy that you're potentially looking at, or maybe is he a little bit outpriced at front row?
1.63, 1.07, 1.25, 1.49, 1.3, 2.12, 1.27. They were his PPMs at like the back 7 weeks of the season. Had a 5-round average of 60. Sorry, had a 5-round average of 3-round average of 63 last year. Played big minutes. Played 40, 34, 51 minutes at times. There's huge hype on him, but I'm struggling to see the minutes, and there's talk about him playing like if he plays 40 minutes, he'll be averaging 55. 40 minutes is a big ask in this pack. We've already discussed about how if Crichton doesn't start, he'll play through the middle. If Nat Butcher is a big minute guy, he's got a good engine, he can play through there. Lindsay Collins is a staple. Jared Hargraves. Trent Robinson loves what JWH brings in terms of the pure aggression, and it might not be for huge minutes, but do you love, and this is a psychology thing, if Robbo runs with Warrior Hargraves starting, psychologically, how can you pay $460K for a guy off the bench? Like that's the mental dilemma that you have to get over when it comes to May. I can see the appeal. I just wish they were one fucking forward short, because their bench is just going to be Watson, two edge / middles, and then May or Warrior Hargraves. Like it's going to be what we've said. It's going to be Watson, Tupanua, Egan, Nat Butcher, and JWH or Terrell May. That's a lot of fucking middles.
I think the middle, I'm steering clear from the middles, Matty, myself, purely just because we talked about depth, and Josh made a good point there. So, I mean, is he a guy now we just fade? We look for other options. You could save yourself 150K and get Liam Knight.
Yeah, I think so.
Has to.
I think there may be
the answer.
Maybe 7 points between May and Liam Knight. Like
and
I can see,
what's that? A 15-point difference.
Yeah, in terms of price, absolutely. Like if it's a fucked one, because we're sitting here saying that the minutes they're an issue, but his PPM is unreal. We could be sitting here in round 5 saying, "Fuck, man, Terrell May's averaging 61 off 40 minutes." I wouldn't be surprised, but I don't know if I can trust the minute rotation whilst also having Wong and Crichton in my side as we speak at the moment.
Yeah, I'm with you. Boys, let's talk about this last one before we do over-under and move on to the mighty Tigers. Sam Walker is very interesting for me. He's currently about 6% owned, roughly. I mean, we're talking about a guy that kicks goals for the Roosters, and their draw's tough. He's 610K, so he's priced at a 60, basically, for 9. Now, is there a world where you could start with Nicho Hynes and Sam Walker? And this is a question from the Discord as well. There's a fair bit of interest in Sam Walker. What are your thoughts, Matty, first of all? Is he a guy you could potentially look at instead of Nathan Cleary, as we mentioned?
No. Hope this helps.
Good chat. Josh, give me something.
Just not with the draw. Not with the draw.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's not like Sam Walker's 450K where you're like, fuck, like if he has 2 or 3 good games, sweet. But it's like you're paying good money. You're 610K for Sam Walker. You're saying he's going to score better than 60 across those first 10 weeks?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like, I don't know.
Not a chance.
Is he even locked in the goal kicking? Like we saw Suaalii.
He got dropped to reserve grade last year.
Look, I think he's a great footy player, but I also bought Suaalii last year because he was goal kicking, because Sam Walker has been very shaky off the tee. I'm broke. I'm broke because I bought too much Sam Walker stock last year. I don't have the funds to dip back into the market and buy more, unfortunately. I'm still holding mine from last year.
I mean, when we look at the first 6 games that he played last year, 62 and 92 to start the season, but then he had a 24 against Souths. He had a 41 against the Storm and a 30 against the Sharks. And the Sharks still weren't exactly a defensive juggernaut, were they? So, you're probably right. But he did finish the season well, 71 and 76 to wrap things up at the back end. But I think we kind of need to just lock in Cleary and Hynes and just make it work elsewhere with the value that we can see across the park. I think that's probably the safest way to play things. And then, hey, if Cleary stinks it up, and we see they've got a couple of, from round 3 where prices changed, they've got a pretty tough run. You want to bail there and you want to make the most of your cash and then get him back in after the buy, you can do that too.
Just to give you some perspective, would you rather have, and I think the money works with the price differences, would you rather JMK and Moses or Grant and Walker?
JMK and Moses.
Yeah,
because Moses is 70K. Moses is 70K more than Walker, and I'd just rather spend the money on Moses.
It's the Moses-Brown combo that's throwing people off. Otherwise, I reckon it'd be pretty popular.
because you already got the you already got the Brown Lane stack. It's like fuck you all three. Like
you may as well just throw Mike Acevo in there as well. Just get Ryan Madison, Hopgood, just fucking throw half the team in there. Why not? Boys, let's do over under to wrap the Sydney Roosters up. James Tedesco, lots of conversation around the fact that he should give up his fullback jersey for New South Wales and a lot of other things. But
boys, when the fuck was the last time James Tedesco 3% owned?
I know, that's wild, isn't it?
3% for Tedesco. Like, yes, he sucked last year, but 3. We talk about Trell being a fucking ultra pod. Teddy is 3%.
Yep. The draw, it's a no. But 70
I think
is what he is priced at. No from Matty. You reckon 70 over under? Josh, no. Yep, cool. Let's move on. Dom Young, interesting one. We haven't talked about Dom Young yet, but obviously he's pretty expensive. So 63 he is priced at this year around that 640k mark. Do we think he does better or worse? No for Josh.
Unders.
I reckon he could do it.
Oh,
yeah.
Big. Okay.
Yeah, I like Dom
cheese.
Young. Yeah.
Let's move on to the cheese then. 46 over under for him. Sorry, go Josh.
Sorry, I just think Manu's got the fucking sticky hands. I just don't know if he gets ball.
Yeah.
And that's based off him playing on the right hand side. I think Tupu probably plays left. I don't see what Tupu gets dropped straight away. But yeah, Manu just doesn't fucking pass.
That's a good point. What about the cheese? 46 over under.
Yeah, probably
over. Yep.
Remember how I said I was broke? I've remortgaged and I've bought into some cheese stock.
Yeah, good, mate. The wheel of cheese this year is fucking getting more and more expensive as we go as well. What about Big Gus Crichton? 59 he is priced at, or 59 was what he averaged a year ago when he had his last full decent season. 60 plus, you reckon?
You've hiked this up because he's priced at about a 40.
Yeah, he's priced at 40. I just thought that was too easy. He's definitely going over 40, but is he going over 60?
No, he's
I don't think so.
Priced at 40. I have him about 50.
Okay.
Well, I've got him at about 55, so 15 points.
That's still fine. You're still a pickup, but I think if we're expecting the same from 2022-23, yeah, probably not going to happen.
I think he's hot take here. He's a cheaper Sean Lane. People are expecting Sean Lane to be putting out 64 from what he did a couple of years ago. I think Sean Lane's going to be 60? And if we got Crichton at 55, who's 50k cheaper, they're both the same points of value.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean,
I think the appeal for Gus. Sorry, you go. You're right.
No, I was just saying it's the everyone's buying into what happened 2 years ago for Sean Lane, and it's exactly the same thing for Angus Crichton. They're in the same scenario. Angus Crichton had an interrupted year last year, and Sean Lane had an interrupted year last year, and they're both discounted on price. So, they're both the same caliber of player on a decent team.
I wouldn't be surprised either to see Gus start, play the first half, sit for 20 minutes, and then Trent goes, all right, in the middle for you for the last 20, which is fucking unreal. That's perfectly fine.
That'd be awesome. Yep.
If he scores 35 points in his first stint at edge, and then comes on at a 1 ppm for 20 minutes, he's going to score 55. I think that's going to be unreal.
Great.
Yep. Agreed. Boys, let's move to the Tigers and wrap this bad boy up. And we talked about shit draws, but I tell you what, the Tigers have probably one of the best draws in the competition to start the season, don't they, Josh? I mean, they start with the bye, though, which is probably deterring a few people.
Fun fact, the Tigers will be 9th after the first round. You love to see it. We're guaranteed 9th, which is unreal. You talk about the Roosters being a good team with a shit draw. How about a shit team with a good draw? It's a bit of a mixed match.
Is there a good draw for a shit team?
Well, that's I guess just a green draw when we color code it.
Yeah, when we look at like the amount of Supercoach points these teams concede, the Tigers aren't in the worst 4. That's the reality. They're not in the worst 4 teams in terms of conceding Supercoach points. Yes, they might be in the worst 4 teams in scoring them, though. So that's probably one thing you need to consider as well, is that are they going to be able to rack up those points against these bad, leaky teams? But, I mean, fuck. You can't go against Canberra away. Then they've got the Cowboys at home. They've got Para, Dolphins, St. George, who are in the worst 4 Supercoach conceded points. So nice little first 6 rounds to start. And I mean, also, we haven't talked about the fact that having a Tigers player might be really handy to have a loophole and actually have your VC in play.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going out of my way to have a loophole, but if you're choosing between player A and player B, and player B's from the Tigers, probably just side towards them. I'm not saying go out and pick a Tigers player for the sake of it, but definitely having someone there is going to be ideal. And that could be Latu Fainu, who's come over from the Sea Eagles as his brother Samuela. Jaden Campbell from the Dragons as well. Aiden Caesar has come over from Leeds. Solomona Alamolo from Super Rugby, and Justin Olam from the Storm. The outs, it's a tough one, this one. Luke Brooks is gone. I feel like a part of me has left, but also it's like, if you love someone, let them go. That's the way I'm looking at it. So Luke Brooks off to the Seagulls. Tommy Talau, I don't love him, off to the Seagulls. Dane Laurie, that was a weird stint, wasn't it? He was really good and then not. And then he's off to the Panthers. Sean Bloor off to the Storm, and David Norfoluma has been released. Ins and outs, what do we reckon, boys? Tigers have dropped some deadwood in Talau and Norfoluma. Bloor obviously promising, but never fulfilled it at the Tigers. Sure, Luke Brooks, yep. But bringing in guys like Caesar, who you'll expect to start. Olam, we had a weakness at centre. He's going to fill that. Obviously, the Fano boys have huge raps on them.
I wish we got Jaden Campbell, but we unfortunately have Jaden Sullivan from the Dragons instead. I'd be more than happy with Jaden Campbell. But, I mean, do we agree now, and there'll be a conversation later on, but we can probably skip to it now. Do we agree that it'd be Jaden Sullivan and Aiden Caesar in the halves to start the season, Matty?
I think so. I was looking at it, and I think there is a halfback that I will have in my team from the Tigers, but it might just wait until TLT. I think Aiden Caesar's just a placeholder this year. Like, of course, and we didn't talk about it in the Panthers podcast because not that relevant this year. The signing of what's his name?
Luai.
Panthers.
Luai.
Oh, Luai. Yeah.
Sorry. It's a long day. I've got heat exhaustion. Have a look at me. So the signing of Luai, I just think Zeza's a little bit of a placeholder. Like, he's just there to get them through this year. They've got him. They've went and got a bit of experience to steady the ship this year. But then Luai's going to come in next year, and like, you're not going to see the halves that you see this year coming into next year. I think it might even be a Finu and Luai.
Yeah, no, the halves next year will be Fano at 6 and Luai at 7. But then the question begs, do you just give the Tigers are going to suck. No one expects us to make the top 8. Benji's going to get as much time as he needs. Do you just blood Fanu now? And apparently Benji absolutely adores the kid. But is it too soon? That's the big thing. So I think it'll be a preseason watch. Sullivan probably is in front, and I would expect him to be named. But yeah, shoe wraps on Fanu. As for Caesar, though, I think, we'll touch on him in due course. But for the injury standpoints, Adam Dewey's out indefinitely. I think he's only just started running very, very recently. So if he gets back fit and firing, there is a centre spot there that I'd love to see Dewey slot in the centres. I think we'd have a very handy backline with him fit in the centres. Suspensions were pretty good. But yeah, let's touch on these cheapie prospects because Samuela Fainu and Latu Fainu now Mattrix inside the Tigers sort of ultras. There's some chat that Fainu is looking at potentially that number 17 spot, sort of in the Tiger side. So he is definitely one to consider thereabouts. If it's tough with these cheapies though, isn't it? Because of that buy in round 1.
Yeah, it's hard spending. Like, it's easy to spend 200k on a bloke, but like, he's not going to get named week 1, and then if he gets named the 19th man or something, round 2. Like, you do really want a guy that's going to generate some cash. But Samuel Afanu is the guy that I expect to at least get a bench spot. Day 1,
I agree
round
with that.
2. Yeah.
I think the hard part
Braino,
is you've got a couple of guys. Sorry, Josh, you got a couple of guys here. I mean, like, you got Clemmer, you got Stefano, Fanua Pole, you got Matamua, Alex Twile still floating around, and then Fainu as well. Like, you've got so many guys here that could easily slot in and have an expanded role, and we just don't know who that's going to be yet. And especially because Benji, from all reports, has been, very open to changing things up and switching things up this year. Justin Matamua is the guy that I'm fucking looking at personally. I think he's a natural ball playing 13. And Josh, tell me the last time we've had a ball playing lock.
Yeah, it's been probably Elijah Taylor from like 10 years ago. That's the first person that comes to my mind. But I was literally going to say to you, like, Benji has spoken very openly about having his bench be as strong as his starting 13. maybe I'm reading too much into it from a Supercoach standpoint, but that screams to me like I want either Stefano or Fanua-Bole off the bench with Twal and giving us some strike off the bench, which would then leave someone like a 13 open for a Matamua. Probably lines up with Clemmer, Appy, Stefano at 8, 9, 10. And then obviously Bateman, Papali'i pick themselves. And then 13 for me, like Matamua is a natural 13. Like he is an absolute stud. Fanua-Bole, gun footy player. He is fucking unreal too, but he is not a 13. He played 13 last year, just very clunky. His properties as a footy player are going hard running forward. He wasn't getting that at 13. I would love to see Matamua play 13. I think Matamua plays regardless. I'm happy to start with him. I think there's minutes for him there. I have a lot of man love for Matamua, Braino, but as a Tigers fan, I'm sure you can understand why. Like he is
100%.
He is a stud.
I'm with you. He's in my team as well. Just as that kind of, he's the perfect 6th 2RF, isn't he? He's 230 odd K, like basement price. The upside is monumental on this kid. So if you believe that there's a chance that he could be in the starting 13 or he could be in the 13 jumper by round 6, 7, 8, then you just bank him. Just chuck him on your bench. He's going to do no worse off the bench. I think you're right. He will get some bench minutes. Maybe he gets 30, 40 minutes and he can score at maybe a 0.6, 0.7 ppm. He gets you 30 points. Not the end of the world. I'd be happy to kind of save a trade on a guy that I know there's going to be in the starting lineup.
Because he will, as you said, he eventually will come to that starting lineup. So that'll be unreal. Mattrix, Aiden Caesar. So I think the appeal with Aiden Caesar, mate, is the fact that in his times in the NRL, he has 2 standout seasons, one in 2013, one in 2015. Now he's gone 40, 60, 48, 60, 35, 42, 35, 38, 45 for a total NRL average. But those 2 60-point seasons were the years that he goal kicked. Now there were some stats floating around that if you take into his goal kicking percentage with the Tigers' try scoring ability from the last 3 years, it's about 9.5 points of value just in goal kicking there alone. Now, if we take his average NRL, sorry, this is getting very technical. His average for his time in the NRL was 45 points. We tuck on that, 9 points of value for goal kicking. Straight away, he's up to a 55. The question then becomes, does he goal kick? Because if he doesn't, then that makes a certain number 9 a whole lot more viable. Mattrix, tell me why you're not so keen on Aiden Caesar. Is it just because you don't believe in the signing being a long-term thing? Benji doesn't have huge properties for him?
Fuck, you're putting words in my mouth. Tell me why I'm keen on Aiden Caesar.
I said, tell me why you're not keen. I thought you weren't keen. I thought you said he's a placeholder, he's a bum.
I think what you're saying, Matty, was that he was a placeholder for the Tigers.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's a placeholder for the Tigers. Like, I think that he'll play for the Tigers this year and be serviceable. I actually probably think that he's going to be the goal kicker for them. And I just don't think they want to throw any more on Appy. Like he's the captain. It's got to be hard to be the captain of a sinking ship. So you go there. You've got Aiden Caesar, and he's just going to do his thing this year. And he's going to have his contract, and he's going to step in if there's injuries next year. But right now, this year, Aiden Caesar will be playing out the year, and I think he's good value priced at a 32 or whatever he is. I think that he could score. I'm pretty confident that he can score at a 50 in a starting role going forward, especially with an early draw. And I think that I'll cash out on him at a certain point in the first 10 rounds. And yeah, Aiden Caesar will be serviceable. That's where I sit with Aiden Caesar.
Brooksy averaged 55 as a non-goal kicker as the main 7 for the Tigers as well. So I think, am I being
I don't
too
think
biased
Caesar's
to say
as good as Brooksy.
Oh, all right. I think
you just said his best season was 2013, 11 years ago.
In the NRL, he's also been absolutely killing it for Leeds and Huddersfield. Am I being too biased to say that I wouldn't be surprised to see him average like 57, 58?
I think that's a bit of a stretch. I think maybe
Campbell, what playmaking is Campbell going to do? Oh, not Campbell. Sorry, what
Sullivan.
What playmaking is Sullivan going to do?
No, I agree with that. I'm just thinking like we're talking a lot about a guy that, for the most part, hasn't exactly been relevant in the NRL. I mean, we talk about the Super League and we talk about his scoring and his average over there, but the Super League isn't exactly the NRL. And by the way, I'm a fucking big Aiden Caesar fan. I think he could be really good this year. But we're talking about
I don't know,
halfback, right?
Yeah,
we're talking about the
but
halfback
this
position.
This is the thing, though, for me with halfback. It's Cleary, it's Hines, and then do not touch anyone else in between. Go to Caesar or do not touch anyone else in between. And I think Caesar, because he's averaged 45 in the NRL, give him 10 points for goal kicking, give him 10 points for having a decent forward pack to work with. Sorry, not 10 points, fuck, Jesus. Give him 2 or 3 points to work with. I wouldn't be surprised to see 57 average. I know you're sitting there smirking. I just... Maybe I'm buying into the Super League stock too much. Maybe it's a Sam Thompson syndrome.
I hope you're right.
I hope so. Yeah, I'm 100%. Like, I've got him in my team expecting him to get a 50. So that's great.
I think 50's basement. I think 50's basement.
Right.
Lock him in.
Sorry, that was my...
I
didn't expect an Aiden Caesar rant in the preseason.
Hey, anything could happen in 2024. Can we can quickly move past Jaden Sullivan? I think if you're picking one of the halves for the Tigers, you're picking Caesar, or you're just picking Cleary and Hines, right? So,
yeah.
I'm not
any big fallers?
Jaden Sullivan.
Any big fallers, boys, for the Tigers? Or I mean, like, because they obviously had a pretty ordinary season last year. The highest price player for the West Tigers is John Bateman at 623k. Then you got Jareem Buller at 583. Like Isaiah Papali'i, he could be even underpriced at 568k. Now that he has a 5'8" that could maybe put him through a hole. Everyone seems kind of underpriced, so it's hard to see anybody falling any lower than the wooden spoon that they got last year, boys. Am I right here, or can we move on to the best value?
Best value straight away. Let's go.
Value.
I don't want to reminisce on last year.
Justin Olam, lads. 420k, 40 break even. I want to buy into it, but I'm just unsure. Because, we see a guy come from a really good team to a bad team. And as much as I like the signing, and I think it's good for the Tigers, can you pay 420k for a guy on a bad team, Josh? Like, is it
Not
worth
at
looking
centre.
at? No.
Nah, not at centre. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm keen to see the international success the Tigers have over in PNG. We're going to be one of the most supported teams over there. But, like... Nah. I'm keen for the hits. Hopefully just absolutely levels some people, but not from a Supercoach standpoint.
Yeah, there's a bit of Steve Matai about Justin Olam, I think. Not much Supercoach relevance, but some good viewing. You got David Klemmer, though, here, Mattrix. 519k. Not 10 points, but maybe enough to be value in a pretty ordinary position.
Yeah, look, I don't love front row forward, but I do wonder... Maybe if you do find yourself with a bit extra cash, maybe 519k with a 50 break even. I don't think 60's out of the equation for Klemmer. He's still a good player. He had a good year last year. Look, I just don't hate David Klemmer as a front row forward there. And it's only because he's playing forward. If he was a second row forward and he was 519k, I'd probably just put a line through him. But I'm just really struggling at front row forward at the moment.
He had his worst Supercoach season since 2015 last year.
Yep.
So if you're going to buy into a resurgence, maybe there's money to be made, but it's just not worth doing, I don't think.
All right. So, bounce back candidate. We talk about Angus Crichton being a bounce back. We talk about Sean Lane being a bounce back. Now, Angus Crichton lost the most money in all of Supercoach last year. Sean Lane lost the third most money in all of Supercoach last year. Two guys that were really keen on a bounce back. The second biggest loser last year was Isaiah Papali'i. Now, averaged 55.7, which is a disgrace for what he's put up in previous years.
Mm-hmm.
Are we buying into the Papali'i stock? Buying at an all-time low?
He still plays for the Tigers, man.
We're going to be good this year, man. We're going to be good, I'm telling you.
No, you're going to be good next year.
He started last year on the right edge, didn't he? So if he started last year on the right edge and it was ordinary, then he moved to the left edge and nothing really changed because he was outside Luke Brooks, who isn't renowned to put his back rowers through holes. I need to watch. I need to watch and see how he goes with whoever ends up being at 5'8". Personally, I just can't. I can't start with him. But I do agree in what you said, Josh. I think he's definitely underpriced.
There was stretches.
Are you?
There's stretches. So I'm keen. I'm not obviously I can't pay that much to start with a guy on the buy.
I bought him last year. Well, actually, Matty, we both bought him last year at one point, didn't we?
Yeah, we both had him at certain times last year. Yep.
I was literally about to say rounds 4, 5, and 6, 70, 64, 60, and then I think in rounds 24, 25, 26, 65, 66, 60. Like he goes on little runs, and I just think if you can get a natural halfback in what Caesar is, and Sullivan, who's just going to be like a shoveler, just move the ball on. I think if we're keen on Crichton and keen on Lane, who both massively lost price last year, then I think probably he has to be there or thereabouts in the conversation as well.
Fair enough. What about Appy? Does this basically just be prefaced by if he has the goal kicking, he's a must-have at hooker?
Yes. If he doesn't, I'm not touching him. If he's goal kicking, if week 2 trials winds up, we see Justin Olam just score under the posts after a breakaway, and Appy has the tee, I'm going to be just mute my social medias because it's going to be hell. I am going to erupt because he will become a must-have. Absolutely. Goal kicking hooker? Who are you? Cameron Smith?
Yep. Agreed.
Love it.
He's straight in my team if he's goal kicking. If not, there's no point. I agree with that.
So what do you
Matty,
do then? Do you cop the 41 points from Jaden Brayley in round 1? Do you just have hands?
Yeah.
You'd have to. I think you'd have hands, and you just move on, and you just make sure you've got cash there to go to Appy in either round 2, or you just keep Appy on the bench. There's no point wasting a trade, actually. Renege that. You've just got to put Appy on the bench and just roll with your bench hooker for 1 week and just cop the loss, I think. But again, if we're right on Parramatta and we're, and Brad Arthur is true to his word, which is very rare, then, hey, we're in for a good spot. This last one, Matty, for you, you've got Junior Tupou.
Yeah, 446k, 44 break even. I just think Tupou could be okay. I don't know. It's the West Tigers. I know there's always an asterisk, but I'm sitting here with a couple of West Tigers supporters. Talk me into him, talk me out of him. Tupou.
He was good last year, wasn't he, Braino? Like, he was like a shining. Him and Buller were a shining light, and of course, for the Tigers, the minute we get a shining light, it's taken away from us, and he's off to the Dolphins next year. I can probably leave him. Turned off a lot. I don't. Yeah, I don't see a huge amount of value in Tupou. Like, you're putting a lot of stock in Tigers attack, which is fucking not a good stock to buy.
I think the guy is nearly a must-have on a good team, but do I buy him on the Tigers? And that's from a Tigers supporter. Honestly, like, the guy's super athletic, isn't he? Like, when you see Junior Tupou leap up for the high ball, and you just, like, you can see, like, how athletic and how fit and how, like, perfect he is for his position. But it's just unfortunate that he's on a bad team. Otherwise, I reckon he'd be a must-have. But, probably a fade. Based on, and centre wing as well, like, I mean, would you rather Taylor May or Junior Tupou? That's literally the question you're asking at the same price point.
100%.
You've set these over-unders, Matty, for the last team, the West Tigers. So throw them at us.
Yeah, let's go. Well, I was going to go IPAP at 55, but after hearing Josh, let's go IPAP at 60.
Oh, okay. That's where we get a bit dicey. I just take the overs, like 61, 62.
Yeah,
I'll take the overs on the IPAP.
I'm on the
Cool.
overs too.
So that means IPAP's at sensational value, guys. Johnny B,
6 points.
Johnny B, at 60 there. I was going to say 59, but let's just go at 60. Call it a line.
Same. I'll take the overs.
I think overs as well, purely because how good. I mean, look, he showed us his work rate last year, but also on an edge, he's pretty dangerous as well. He's a good line runner, good hole runner. Can Caesar open him up and give him some more opportunity than Brandon Wakeham last year provided him? I mean, fuck me. Can anybody do something better than what Brandon Wakeham did last year? Surely we could. My nan could play halfback for the West Tigers and do more than Brandon Wakeham did last year. No offense, but actually no offense meant, because anybody could have done a better job. So surely
Brandon Wakeham had his best game against the Dragons when I was at Magic Round. He was great, but let's just leave
he was
that
good
there.
that game.
Yeah, he was insane. Like, honestly, like the one time I've seen Brandon Wakeham play, he was sensational. So take offense there a little bit. Dream Buller, Dream the Dream, 56.5.
Up.
You could put the line at 80 and I'm taking overs.
Was that just
Turbo versus Buller head-to-head in drafts? Just Buller, just lock. No, look. In all seriousness, it's a team on the improve and a guy that's maturing. Yes, you worry about second season syndrome, but I'm pretty keen on Jareem the Dream.
Yeah, I mean, and if he bottoms out, I mean, the problem is the Tigers draw doesn't get any better. If you're not jumping on him to start, it gets really tough through the origin period. So you've kind of got to just buy into a guy or two from the Tigers to start the season and take advantage of their nice draw. And then you've probably got to move them on to those better options once those good ones drop off. But yeah, as a player, I fucking love him. Absolutely love him. I really hope we offer him some sort of max contract because he is definitely the long-term fullback for the Tigers moving forward, I think. Boys, let me just quickly scan these questions here because we've got... actually, we had a question around Appy and if we'd pick him if he was goal kicking, so we've already covered that.
Yeah. If he's goal kicking.
Yep. I guess the question is the round one bye. So, I mean, how many is the maximum amount of Tigers that you want to have? Let's just say you're really buying into the iPad hype. You've got Appy if he's goal kicking. We've got Aiden Caesar as well, potentially, as a nice value option. How many is too many to have on the buy in round one, Josh?
I think as many as you want for guaranteed starters, like IPAP, Appy, Bateman. If you had all three of them, whatever, that's fine. Bull, if you had him too, like that's 4. I'd be happy if you had them. It's just it gets dicey when you have Matamua, you have Fainu times 2. Like if you've got 3 Tigers there that are unknowns, that's where it gets dicey. So I'm pretty much going to be keen to just have 1. Maybe 2 if there's some strong word. But in terms of like starters, sure, have as many as you want. If you know that IPAP and Bateman are going to be named, you know Appy's named, that's fine because there's no risk there. The risk comes with training and injuries. That's the only risk that you face there.
Yeah, the fringe guys you want to stay away from. Matty, any final thoughts on Tigers or anything, Supercoach, to wrap this one up? We've been gone for nearly 2 hours.
I just got really disappointed then Sione Finau, the winger for the St. George Dragons. I just got really disappointed that I didn't mention him, and I thought that he'd be okay for now.
Jesus fuck, that'll do. I've seen a few of your dad jokes in chats as well, and that's probably one of the worst.
You're welcome.
Guys, that'll do. Like I said, it's nearly been 2 hours. We'll talk 5 teams as well, so there's plenty of content there. But that wraps up the team previews, which I'm stoked about. We all know that the content and the content we love to talk about is positions, and we're going to dive a lot deeper into those and start talking with hookers in the coming days as well. So keep an eye out for that one, and then obviously we're going to dive into the rest of the positions as well. If you haven't yet, jump in the Discord. Josh mentioned at the start of the show, if you've made it through the whole show, they've got the community team that we're starting to pick at the moment. So jump in, get involved in that, subscribe, like, follow, review, all that stuff for the podcast. We would appreciate it. And that'll do us. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Catch you later.
Cheerio.